Donald Trump has a history of racist behavior going back decades, some of it taught to him by his father, Fred Trump, who managed to get himself arrested at a Ku Klux Klan rally. That history was chronicled by my first guest tonight, Nick Kristof, in a recent New York Times column. And now that Donald Trump realizes he cannot win the election without appealing to voters who are not racist and bigoted, he did what a petulant child might do. He accused his opponent of what he knows he is guilty of.
She is a bigot because you look at what's happening to the inner cities. You look at what's happening to African Americans and Hispanics in this country, where she talks all the time. She's talking, look at the vets, where she said the vets are being treated essentially just fine, that it's over-exaggerated what's happening to the vets not so long ago.
But how is she bigoted? Bigoted is,
well, because
having hatred toward a
she's selling
group.
them down the tubes, because she's not doing anything for those communities. She talks a good game,
so
but she doesn't do anything.
She has hatred
her
or
policies
dislike
are
of black
bigoted.
people?
Her policies are bigoted because she knows they're not going to work.
But you're saying she is personally bigoted.
Oh, she is. Of course she is. Her policies, they're her policies. She comes out with the policies, and others that believe like she does also. But she came out with policies over the years. This is over the years, long time. She's totally bigoted. There's no question about that.
Hillary Clinton is a bigot. That is the new Trump campaign slogan. And no matter how many African Americans publicly complain about what Donald Trump says about them, Donald Trump insists that he knows better than African Americans what African Americans are thinking.
We've been, interviewing a lot of African American voters. Some of them are insulted by some of the language you've been using.
I don't think they are. I think if they actually heard me, they wouldn't be insulted at all.
In his interview with Anderson Cooper tonight, Donald Trump appeared to reverse his 2 days of softening on mass deportation when he said no undocumented people will be allowed to stay in the United States. They will have to return to their country of origin and then ask to come back in.
There's not a path. There is no path to legalization.
You talked about paying back
unless
taxes
people
on Kennedy.
leave the country, well, when they come back in, if they come back in, then they can start paying taxes.
So they still have to leave the country.
But there is no path to legalization unless they leave the country and come back.
In a hard-hitting speech today, Hillary Clinton talked about the recent changes in the Trump campaign, including the new campaign CEO, Stephen Bannon.
Trump likes to say he only hires the best people, but he's had to fire so many campaign managers, it's like an episode from The Apprentice. The latest shakeup was designed to, quote, let Trump be Trump. So to do that, he hired Stephen Bannon, the head of a right-wing website called Breitbart.com, as the campaign CEO. Now, to give you a flavor of his work, here are a few headlines they've published. And I'm not making this up. Birth control makes women unattractive and crazy. Would you rather your child had feminism or cancer? Gabby Giffords, the gun control movement's human shield. Just imagine Donald Trump reading that and thinking, this is what I need more of in my campaign.
The Clinton campaign released this web video today highlighting Donald Trump's support from white supremacists.
Donald Trump would be best for the job.
For president.
Yeah.
I am a farmer and white nationalist. Support Donald Trump.
Sending out all the illegals, building a wall, and a moratorium on Islamic immigration. That's very appealing to a lot of ordinary white people.
Voting against Donald Trump at this point is really treason to your heritage.
Donald Trump responded today by pretending that Hillary Clinton is saying that all of Donald Trump's supporters are white supremacists.
Hillary Clinton isn't just attacking me. She's attacking all of the decent people of all backgrounds, doesn't matter, of all backgrounds, who support this incredible, once-in-a-lifetime movement. When democratic policies fail, they are left with only this one tired argument. You're racist, you're racist, you're racist. They keep saying it, you're racist. It's a tired, disgusting argument.
Joining us now, Eugene Robinson, Pulitzer Prize-winning opinion writer for The Washington Post and MSNBC political analyst. Tara Wall, filmmaker and former senior media advisor for the Republican National Committee and the Romney 2012 campaign. And with us here in New York, Nick Kristof, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for the New York Times. Nick, your recent column about Donald Trump's history, which includes his father's history, is brought a lot of us back to some of the things that we'd forgotten about in his history. Donald Trump tonight addressed one of the things you brought up, which was the housing discrimination that he and his father engaged in, and describe the practices they used as you understand it.
Sure. I waded through more than 1,000 pages of these documents. The Nixon administration, not famed for its civil rights activism, had sued the Trump companies, of which Donald Trump was then the president, for routine housing discrimination. What they had done was they sent out testers to Trump properties, some whites and some blacks. Consistently, the blacks were told that there was no room available. White was told, yes, here's this nice apartment. And in turn, it turned out that people who worked at the buildings were told that if a black person actually applied for an apartment, then their application was to be coded, in one case C for colored, so that they would be sure not to give it to somebody who was not white. So you had this consistent policy across Trump properties. The initial suit was 1973. There was a follow-up suit when Trump failed to implement his consent decree. And then, that was just in the 1970s. Then you have this whole layer of similar Trump behaviors in the 1980s, the 1990s, right through the present.
Let's listen to Donald Trump's response to Anderson Cooper about this tonight.
We were sued many, many years ago when I was very young by the government, sued many, many companies. You know that. It wasn't me. They sued many companies.
But your company was sued for not allowing black people
And you know what? They found nothing. They found absolutely nothing.
You settled?
They bring up a case. I settled with no awards, no nothing.
But didn't people in your company use the words?
I don't even know. Honestly, what a superintendent does at a building, that I can't tell you. But I can just tell you that they settled the case, and that was the end of it. It was many years ago, and I guess they found we did nothing wrong because we didn't have to do anything. We didn't have any payments to make. We didn't have to pay $20 million in fines. We didn't have any.
You didn't pay any money in order to settle?
We didn't. It's a long time ago, but I don't believe so, no.
Nick, is that your understanding of the case?
That's a complete misstatement of what happened. In fact, you look at those old clippings, and everybody regarded at the time that settlement to be a complete victory for the government. Mm-hmm. Trump, they did consent to doing various activities. They agreed to advertise their properties in black audience publications, for example, so that African Americans would have an early crack at those apartments. They agreed to end this kind of discrimination, and then when they did not adhere to it, the government actually sued them again. So it was completely recognized by absolutely everybody at the time that there was wrongdoing and that Trump had to take significant measures to try to address it.
And Eugene Robinson, there's a long history of people on the wrong side of racism and bigotry accusations turning that around and aiming that at other people in an attempt to render the words completely meaningless. If you get to stand up there and say Hillary Clinton's a bigot, one of the things you're trying to do is make that word have no meaning anymore.
Right, but it does have meaning, and we know which way it cuts in this election. I mean, think about it. In his 20s, Donald Trump and along with his father, was being sued for housing discrimination. In her 20s, Hillary Clinton was in the South working for the Children's Defense Fund, combating school segregation. So the idea of Donald Trump standing on the stage screaming Hillary Clinton is a bigot and it's not just offensive, but it's like many things in this campaign. It's really crazy.
Tara Wall, there's a passage that's quoted in Nick's column that's from a 1991 book that talks about Donald Trump being upset that he discovered that there was a black man working on his accounting. And this is the quote in the book, quoting Donald Trump as saying, "Black guys counting my money, I hate it. The only kind of people I want counting my money are short guys that wear yarmulkes every day. I think the guy is lazy, and it's probably not his fault because laziness is a trait in blacks. It really is. I believe that. It's not anything they can control."
Yeah, I just had a chance to read that on the way over, and of course, I mean, it's true, if it's accurate, I defer to Nick's reporting on that. But if it is accurate, I mean, it's absolutely reprehensible. I think that Trump tried to say that he doesn't either recall saying that or didn't say it. Obviously, I wasn't there, so I can't say. But if that happened, it's certainly reprehensible. I think the bigger problem for Trump is that even if, for the sake of argument, this happened years and years ago and it's something he forgot, I think even in the clip you just played with Anderson Cooper, to show, any real lack of, ownership over some of these things, to instantly kind of go to that knee-jerk reaction of, well, it didn't happen, we settled, there was nothing there. There has to be at some point a certain level of deference, you would think, particularly in a presidential candidate and someone who is saying anyway that they want to reach out and court voters. That's arguable, but I think it is at best, obviously troubling, and legitimately, I think that these are questions I think that are going to continue to surface and come out, that will probably come out during the debates. But I will say this too. I mean, it's obvious. We're at this point in the race where when both sides are lobbying racism charges against one another, I mean, it's not unheard of for Democrats to bring up the race card as they generally do in elections against Republicans. It's always kind of a knee jerk. I think though, for Trump's case, he has provided so much fodder that it's really hard for him to back away from any of it, and to use this narrative. I think it's legitimate on one hand to raise the issue. Yes, Democrats have failed black voters in this regard, or one regard over another. It's legitimate to raise that. It's legitimate to bring that up. The problem is the messenger and where that's coming from, particularly because of all the hyperbole and the rhetoric that he's already lobbed against minority voters early on.
Hillary Clinton gave her first speech today where she talked about the alt-right, the alternative right, which is to the right of the right wing of the Republican Party. It's a term we've all been learning recently. It involves a lot of white nationalists, as they call themselves, white supremacists. Let's listen to what Hillary Clinton said about that today.
The de facto merger between Breitbart and the Trump campaign represents a landmark achievement for this group, a fringe element that has effectively taken over the Republican Party. And this is part of a broader story, the rising tide of hardline right-wing nationalism around the world.
And Nick, one of the objectives that they have is this neutralizing of the language, to be able to just accuse everyone of being a bigot, therefore no one's a bigot.
Yeah, although, I mean, frankly, I think it's probably not a great strategy for him to raise the term bigotry, because when you think about bigotry, what do you see? You see somebody who has this long record going back, as we said, since the 1970s. I mean, his dad, as you say, arrested at a Klan rally in 1927. Woody Guthrie denouncing his dad for racism in the 1950s, and then on not only through the casinos, African American working at him in the casinos said that when Donald Trump visited, all the black employees were ushered off and hidden in the back so that he wouldn't see them. And then, in the campaign, you have the tweets. I mean, this is somebody who has twice retweeted a white genocide Twitter handle with a photo of the founder of the American Nazi Party.
It says white genocide right on it. You know what it is.
It's astonishing, and it. I do think that one study found that. That 1/3 of the accounts that Trump follows, that Trump retweeted, in turn follow white nationalist, white supremacist handles. And, how do you even find these sites out there unless you're kind of looking for them? I mean, it does reflect the degree to which Donald Trump is not a mainstream Republican candidate, but is much more akin to some of the far-right political figures we've seen in Europe, for example.
Gene, quickly before we go, Donald Trump now seems confused as to whether he's softening or hardening, and I'm telling you, those are his words tonight.
Yeah, I know.
As he was talking about it. How do we tell?
We can't.
Okay.
We absolutely can't.
We just
you know,
can't,
the famous quote from his spokeswoman, Katrina Pearson, Mr. Trump isn't changing his positions, he's just changing the words he uses. In fact, all he has is words, Lawrence. He doesn't have positions. He has words, and he has volume, and that's what we got.
I will say, though, that I disagree with one point that Hillary Clinton made about this being reflective of the party. I think what it does is it undermines the Republican Party's efforts. It's coming mainly from Trump, and it goes to the very base of core folks within the party, and it continues to feed that narrative from those folks when he doesn't immediately and consistently condemn folks like that.
Tara Wall gets the last word on this segment. Nick Kristof, Eugene Robinson, Tara Wall, thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate it.